The Land of Osgul. A Fool and His Goal, written by Richard Todd. This book is created as well by Richard. It's book 1. Chapter 1. It wasn't hard for the elf, which was known as Narval, since he had seen nothing of his country. He just sat there as dumb as a post. He didn't think of his actions. It just came naturally to him to question everything that was within his own country and what lay beyond. Nara was way too good as a warrior. He didn't know why it was, and yet for some reason, some almighty source had set his fate. Some believed that Narval was chosen to stop the evil that controlled this land, and yet others believed that he was just a threat to their own country. Narval didn't believe any of them, since he truly believed that no one could control their fate. I control my own fate, Narval thought. He heard a noise behind him, turning to look at a figure. A hand slapped him across his face. "That hurt," Narval said, as he reached to touch his face. He could tell a bruise was going to form from the slap. "Don't call me baby, Narval," a female voice said, as she grinned at him, then laughed with disbelief. "I may not be a baby, but that really hurt, Toluca," Narval said as he poured out some medicine to heal his wound. "Don't be such a cry-baby. You need to be tougher than you already are. Besides, a hard-earned warrior like yourself needs to be tough." Talissa said as she let her elven features be shown in the sunlight. She smelled the morning dew that lay around them, of the flowers that lay nearby. Rosewood they were, red to look at the deadly, but very deadly to touch. Tolusa looked at the far-off mountains, which the orcs and goblins made their homes. She didn't care for the war that was going on, since it bored her to tears. Her father, General Balian, was off fighting near one of the human cities. Both of them stared off into space, trying to think of peaceful times that lay hidden years ago. It helped to think of her father as she fought to free the country from an evil race which sought to take over the country. She spat at the ground. "I hate boy," she thought, as she moved over the grass with a warrior beside her, gazing at the far-off city of Drakron. The two heard running footsteps which were coming their way. To Luca raised her hand. Both stopped walking, since they were in the middle of a field of flowers which came up to their waist. Moving her head to the side, she spotted an arrow heading toward her. Tolaka dropped to the ground as it flew overhead. Narva was too proud to back away from the fight. He too turned, but he noticed an entire army advancing toward them. She glanced at him and ran away. Narva followed as he ran as fast as he could. Toluca just heard a snap of a branch that's off to the left of her. She smiled as she now realized that the two woods had just entered a war zone. They were caught in the middle of it. Arrows flew past them both from both sides. But still two didn't stop. Running full force, Toluca ran into the woods with her companion. Several arrows hit the trees as they continued to run. Narva was out of breath. A voice called out over to them. "Duck!" Toluca said urgently, but not only ducking, but rolled to the ground as a set of traps were triggered. 10 orcs died upon impact. Toluca and Narva turned to the left. Another voice warned them of another trap. Both jumped into the air as several more orcs were killed on spikes. No wonder we had to jump, Narvel said, still out of breath from all the running. His head hurt, but he ignored it for now. 2 humans came out in a rush, grabbing the two as they hid once again in the small wood. The soldiers didn't speak as more of the vile creatures rushed past them. The elf looked at the male soldier, trying to get free from his pressing body. She looked at the soldier's side and noticed 4 large arrows had penetrated his armor. "We have to leave," the soldier said, not having time to introduce himself as he looked at his fallen comrade. He bit down on his emotions. Since the man that had died was his own brother, the rest of us will be. 4 orcs sprawled. The 3 of them and rushed over, which had interrupted the single soldier's thoughts. Narvel grabbed onto his sword, which hung at his side, extending the huge crown and sword. He twisted as 2 orcs tried to hit him, but the soldier only watched in amazement as the young warrior tore into the 4, not halting in any of his movements. All 4 orcs lay dead as Trudoka smiled at her young friend, who was putting away his sword. "I've never seen anyone so young, and yet so skilled. You must be 15 summers years old," David said, then introduced himself. But he noticed that several more orcs had seen the fight. "We better go," David remarked, not willing to take on the enemy anymore, since there were way too many of them. The 3 raced toward the camp that the soldiers was leading to them. A volley of arrows flew over them, hitting the orcs and trolls behind them. A single arrow flew right at them. Kurtulika grabbed onto the soldier and pushed him forward as he fell to the ground. And that is part 1, chapter 1. I'm Richard Todd, and thank you for listening. Part 2, a single hour flew overhead. She uttered a single word as the two fell to the ground. David stared at the narrow that was several feet away. He laughed heartily, since he was glad to be alive. Once back on his feet, he looked right into the owl's eyes. "Thank you," David said, as he turned and walked right back into the camp. A second later, Narvel looked over his shoulder and glanced as he noticed the last of the orcs being slaughtered. He just stood there, awestruck by the sight, but it was interrupted by a single voice. "You here? Who have we here, and how did they come to be here?" a general said as he walked up to the three of them. Narvel studied the general from head to foot. His armor was all gold, and the helmet covered his head, but not his face. His brown eyes pierced at the young man, seeing potential, since he and his men had also seen the way the boy fought. "They happened upon us, sir. We helped them escape the traps that were set for the orcs," David informed his general. The general smiled faintly. He done this thing for an elf and a fellow warrior. "This elf saved your life," the general said as he bowed his head toward her. He reached out as he grasped his hand in a good handshake. "I am Tuka, and this is my companion, Narvel. He was, and he has been, in my service for 13 summers. I taught him all I know about weapons and how to fight. He's known within my people as a mighty warrior," she informed the general, who was eagerly impressed. "It's nice to meet you, Kuka. I am General Renah of the city of Belric. We were just finishing up on some war games until the attack came," Renah said as he took off his helmet for the first time, then decided not to since his men were returning from the field. "Sir," a soldier said, "we lost at least 20 good men," as he walked up to his commander, which by now had a sour look upon his face as he looked and noticed the company that the general had. The soldier walked to the side of the general, waiting for him to finish with these intruders. Relna turned his head and waited for his soldier to finish his report. "You will be so kind to finish your report, soldier," Relna demanded as he waited with bitter breath. "I will not. These two are outlaws and could be spies." The soldier breathed with disgust. "Hold your tongue, soldier. I have heard of them. Great stories are told of the young man and his elven friend," Relna said, hoping that his soldier just finished his report already. The soldier gazed at the two with hatred, not willing to give his commander and his report until the two left, but Relna looked angry. Do a cool step forward, which caught the two's attention. If it displeases you so much to be near us, then why do you stink of orc hide? I saw you with a couple of them when the two of us were running away. Duke informed them as she watched the human go stiff. Landis? You were near this soldier when this attack came? Commander Rona said, trying to stay calm under the situation. He said that he had something to do. I followed him, sir. The elf speaks the truth, Landis said, as the commander broke the stick. Rona was mad, and his eyes turned cold. Do all of you remember what we do to traitors? As he stepped to the soldier, the soldier wet himself right on the spot, and terror filled within him as he knew what was about to happen. It was the orcs. They told me I would get a reward for telling them where you were, the soldier said, trying to plead for his life. His commander gazed at him, hearing every word. He shivered with anger as his face twisted. Congrats, this is your prize. Every hour shot toward killing the man for his betrayal. Now, where were we before we were rudely interrupted as the dead body was dragged away? And this is the end of chapter 1. If you particularly enjoyed what you have heard, you will probably enjoy the book once it's finished. And whenever that is,